Okay, we'll go ahead and turn on the transcripts. If I can find it here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I turned on captioning. Okay, welcome everyone to today's event. It's a panel discussion on service product and product management. We're joined by 3 panelists from different universities who will lead a vibrant discussion about their role in product and service management. We're hoping today's event helps to clear up some of the confusion around the differences, similarities, roles and responsibilities, and where product and service management sit within the organization, and really other points of confusion. We have a set of great questions prepared, but we encourage you to think of your own and add them to the Q&A. At the end of the questions that we have lined up for our panelists, we'll jump into the Q&A, so you have plenty of time to think about your question and add them to the Q&A. The presentation, in addition to the questions and some of the background, will last anywhere between 40-45 minutes with time left over. Everyone will be on mute, but I encourage you to A, post your questions in the Q&A, and B, if you want to ask a question out loud, just use the raise hand feature. I'll take you off mute, and when you're done asking a question, I'd ask that you put yourself back on mute. We encourage you to have conversation in the chat. That's what the chat window's for. And again, the webinar is being recorded and it'll be available on the EDUCAUSE ITSM CG website within 5 business days. So a couple learning objectives we're hoping that you get out of today's discussion. So understanding and be able to articulate the meaning and applications of terms like products, services, service offerings, solutions, and applying each of these in your organization by examples that our panelists will share. Discovering some steps to change the culture and build product and service-centric teams, and finally learning some specific strategies for managing services and products. So before we turn it over to panelists, which will explore how each institution has interpreted and executed uniquely on the concepts like product, services, and service offerings, I want to take a moment to talk briefly about the big picture. I'll cover the ITIL 4 concept of the service value chain, which is really an IT operating model. I'll also talk about the concept of value co-creation. So ITIL 4, for those of you who don't know, defined a product, and I think they did a better job in ITIL 4 than in prior versions, as a configuration of an organization's resources. And we know resources can be anything from people to technology to organizational structure to practices, value streams. So it's just all of these things and how you align these things to deliver a service. So a service in ITIL 4 definition is a means of enabling value co-creation. Co-creation is not a new concept, but it's a new concept in ITIL 4, where there's an active participation between the consumer and provider to actively engage and continue to provide value, which I'll get into a little bit in the next slide, by facilitating outcomes, not outputs, but outcomes that our customers are looking to achieve without them having to manage specific costs and risk. And that last part has been universal on all versions of ITIL. So really the key point here that I want to drive is that services are made up of one or more products, and only a small portion of products are actually exposed to customers. I want you to look up at some point a service blueprint. A service blueprint is a way to architect services so that there's back-end support and front-end support. And if you look at a service blueprint, you'll kind of make sense of how to align services and products and where things are in that stack. The other thing I wanted to call your attention to is last year, the ITSM CG steering committee, about 20 of us strong now, came up with a definition of IT service management that we like that applies to higher ed. So IT service management is how an IT organization manages the services used by our campus constituents, customers, end users, whatever you want to call them. This includes the required processes and activities to plan, design, create, deliver, and support, and continually improve. Notice sort of that service life cycle approach. the services that our faculty, students, and staff need. So the service value chain is an IT operating model for the activities of creating, delivering, and ongoing improvement of services. This includes the 4 dimensions of people, processes, information technology. It's really the key activities required to create value in response to demand. So a customer is at the beginning of demand. They want either to take advantage of a new opportunity, like the whole buzz right now is on generative AI, right? That's an opportunity that we can take advantage of for organization, or it may be in response to a break fix, restoring an incident, or resolving a problem. The value chain, this is not meant to be sequential, but it's meant to be presented in a useful way so that people understand what an organization does. It's abstract and representative. IT for IT and other service management frameworks all have some form of operating model. There's always a human at the beginning, at the end of this operating model that we're supporting. The key takeaway here is that value chains allow us to enable business and customer desired outcomes, which leads us to my next point. It's all about value and the people from which the value is intended. And notice here, we use products and services in this operating model to deliver value at the end. So the final thing I want to leave you with is this concept of value co-creation. So value can be defined as something that's useful, beneficial, and important to the intended receiver of value, right? And the value creation is an active use of companies' products and services through service interactions between the customer and the provider. This ensures that the value is continuing to be aligned with customer expectations and value proposition. So I would encourage you to use design thinking like journey maps and service blueprints to design services that achieve business and customer desired outcomes. So now I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to our first panelist, Sarah, who will introduce herself.
Thanks, Mitch. And thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Sarah, and I lead 2 teams here at the Office of Information Technology at Ohio University, our IT product managers and our IT business analysts. I've been with the university for about 4.5 years now, and was originally hired to help bring on our first group of what we then called service owners. We've made a change in how we approach service management. Now we're taking a product approach. So that's why this session today keenly interests me. And our product teams, one of the things that we decided as a group that we would talk about is how we each define these different things that we're going to talk about today. We have persistent product teams that support our IT products, and those are groups of cross-functional folks, mostly in our IT department, but also include stakeholders outside of IT. And like I said, they're persistent, so they're ongoing and charged with the evolution of a certain product or group of products. And as you can see on my slide, they represent a wide variety of different areas from a functional perspective. I also added 3 of our definitions. As I mentioned, we have gone through a shift where we are taking a product approach to our IT portfolio. And as part of that, we actually created a pretty robust glossary full of definitions to hopefully make sure we're all kind of singing from the same hymnal and not confusing each other with the way that we use our words. And so 3 are up there on the screen: product, service, and product manager. The difference between product and service are things we struggled with a little bit as we tried to define those in a way that differentiated them from each other. And so we landed on service being more transactional. One of our big focuses is moving from doing IT for the business, like service provisioning, to doing IT with the business, which is what we say underpins our product approach.
All right, thank you, Sarah. We'll go ahead and introduce our next panelist, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch, and thank you all for being here. I have been with University of Colorado for over 10 years in various IT support roles. Currently, I'm a principal ITSM engineer, so I particularly enjoy IT service management, right? And I like to think a lot about and help design frameworks for how we operate, for how we deliver value to customers. And I think what I wanted to say today or share was that, as I'm sure is the case for each of your organizations, IT service management is a journey. It's one that you never kind of end. It's a continuous thing that moves through time. And the last few years for our organization, we've really been focused on our operating model, and in particular, how we define our products, our services, right? What do those words mean? And so I would share that, you know, in my experience, the words we use are really important, right, as people, and having a clear understanding of those, what we mean when we use a word is really important, that folks understand when I say this word, you also think this word in your head, right? There's a common meaning or vernacular that's out there. And that's a lot harder than it sounds like, right? It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of facilitation, and it takes a lot of intention. So for the folks in my organization that are here today, I wanted to say thank you for going on that journey with us. Because yeah, the words that we use are important. And in particular, as many institutions have, we've struggled with the difference between some of these over time. Mitch, if you could move that forward one. So what I have here is just the terminology that we're using in my organization for some of these things, right, these constructs. And it's based in ITIL 4, but I think we even had some of our own confusion from an ITIL 4 perspective on some of these. And so when we think service, or when we use that word service in my organization, I think this is similar, Sarah, to what you've got, right? It's something that's kind of intangible. There's something intangible about the service. And for us, it's really focused on meeting a need through some action that we take as a service provider, some effort we're going to take on behalf of customers, some expertise that we have that we can provide to them. So there's some intangibility about it, but it's really action oriented, right? We're going to enable value, co-create value by doing something for our customers. So we've got examples in our catalog, like we'll do application management, or we do infrastructure management, right? Really centered on the actions we're taking as a service provider that are somewhat intangible to our customers, right? They don't see us doing those things, but they know that we're doing those things. Products, right, really then is something we've introduced in the last couple of years. It's really focused on what's tangible about what we're providing. And that tangibility can be physical, right? It could be a laptop on a desk, but it's also, there's like a digital tangibility, right? There's something I can log into and interact with and use. And so we've really centered products on you know, the technology, right? It's those tangible things. And sometimes it's a combination of multiple products, right, that we might think of as one thing. So tried to center a product for our organization around the technology specifically, or in some cases, physical, right? Physical things that we provide. And then the third word is a little different maybe than you've seen before, but we struggled with service offering, I think, as a way that ITIL presents the combination of all the things you do, all the technology you bring to bear, you put that together, you give it a name, and you offer it to customers. We've struggled with that because it's another use of the word service. And so it kind of adds to the confusion between what's the difference between a service and the service offering. And so for our organization, the word solution has really gotten some traction. So we define a solution as a specific bundling of those service actions we provide and the products that we offer to customers that are both kind of put together and tailored to meet a need. So it's very much the ITIL 4 definition of a service offering. But for us, we avoid the word of that S word again, service, right? That solution, right, really has gotten some traction for my organization. So that's how we define these three words.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll hand it off to our final panelist, Nathalie, to introduce herself.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nathalie Gholmieh. I'm the director of the Data and Integration Services team here at UC San Diego, Central IT Department. So I'm going to start with our definitions of the terms and then move into my role in all of this. So here at UC San Diego, I have not heard the product terminology being used yet. So we define services as service, right? And I have the definitions on the screen. We have a couple of roles that are associated with the services. So there's the service owner, which is the single point of accountability for a service that's responsible for the service reliability, service availability, all of that kind of thing. And then we have a service offering manager, that does the day-to-day functions to manage the service itself. So next slide, please, Mitch. When it comes to my role, so I am a service owner. So what the perspective that I'm going to be bringing here today is really the implementation of the IT operating model that Mitch has talked about in the beginning. So my role is the service owner of the data integration platforms. So I'm responsible and accountable for the uptime, the security, the scalability of all of the development platform for application and integration development for central IT, as well as the data platforms, so the databases. So from my perspective as a service owner and the way I implement my services, right? For me, service is synonym of platform and it's synonym of product. And the way I've been reading about product management a lot recently, and I'm convinced that this is the way that I manage and run the services that are under my portfolio, because we do run the services based on the total cost of ownership, right? So we define what is the cost of our service. And if I want to, just dive in a little bit into total cost of ownership, it's not just the cost of hosting these platforms, licensing and the vendor support, maintenance cost, but it's also service reliability, monitoring, the service level agreements. It is also the security compliance and all the security processes around the platforms and that risk, right? And on top of all of this, we also consider the development lifecycle on the platforms. So if you have platform A and platform B, development lifecycle might be faster on platform A, so more developers would be churning more applications and faster for the business. So really platform A, that is a consideration of the part of the total cost of ownership of the platform. So we run our services /platforms/products based on their total cost of ownership. We publish a roadmap. So what are the improvements that we're going to do in the next year? We take the feedback from our customers. What are your needs? What features do you need us to release in the next cycle, etc. So we have governance around the services, and we base our roadmap items and roadmap decisions based on reducing the total cost of ownership over time. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to you, Mitch.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nathalie. We're going to go ahead and jump into our set of canned questions for our panelists. Just want to encourage the attendees to put your questions in the Q&A, and hopefully we'll have some time left over for that. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions. The first question here is for Kevin. How do you define the roles and responsibilities of various service management and product management roles?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Mitch, if you could panel back to my slide just for references, I use some words. I would say we are continuing to learn in this regard, right? So we're kind of where we're at now, but we certainly, as we uncover more, as we have folks lean into these roles, we learn more. And so it's an evolving thing for us. Absolutely. One more slide forward, if you could, Mitch. So back to the way that we're defining these constructs for my organization. There's 3 roles in particular that we've got. So we have for services, we have a formal service, a service owner role or service manager role. And that role is particularly responsible for that individual service, right? But really how that service, again, being action oriented, is performed across a set of teams in our organization that might be managed by different people that might interact with different customers, right? There's a set of core actions that we all take across a very matrixed organization. So our service owners really represent the way that we do application management for any of our customers, the way that we think about or do infrastructure management for any of our customers. So the service owner kind of represents a way of doing things. Those responsibilities include not only defining the service, but understanding how it's measured, right? So how do we measure how we're managing applications, how we're doing identity and access management, They create roadmaps, right? They work with some other roles in our organization to understand where the service is going, understand a lot of the process, right? And help to represent process that we have within our org to deliver a particular service. And then, really, I would say the collaboration piece across a number of roles for us are our product managers, our solution managers, as you can see there. We have business relationship managers in UIS. So the service owner is really, again, representing how we do that particular action that we define as a service across a myriad number of teams and across a myriad set of customers. Our product owner or manager role, we kind of have a mix of, I would say, the two. Really is representing that tangible thing. In our case, mostly technology, right? So if you think of a campus solutions or Salesforce, which Nathalie is also a platform, right? Salesforce can be a lot of things, but somebody that's in a position to really understand that technology and help to translate whatever the business need is that this technology can help do, really understand how that technology can or can't meet those requirements, where that technology needs to evolve itself, what other technologies on the market might be competing with this particular technology. So for us, product manager is really centered on and representing the specific technology, or in some cases, set of technologies that they might be in front of. And then our solution manager role is one that we're really still exploring, but this is that idea again of, we have people often in seats and positions that they're the face of something to a particular customer segment. So for our student realm, we've got admissions offices, right, that have particular solutions they use from UIS. And there's a person, right, on our student team that they know represents that for them. So that solution manager really understands how the set or the combination of products and services that we've put together and called a solution and given to them. They know what that combination is. They can represent that combination with customers. They can swivel back into our organization and work with product managers or service owners to, meet a challenge, right, or solve a problem, or help to identify future opportunities. So those are the three roles that we've got really aligned with our framework: service manager, product manager, and then solution manager.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. We have time, like a minute or so, if somebody wants else to chime in. Otherwise, we can jump to the next question.
I'll just add one comment to Kevin's insights is, as we have, decided to kind of shift our approach from a service approach to a product approach, what we found is that definitions weren't quite enough, right? Because to Kevin's point earlier, like we say these words and we assume that the understanding we have inside our head is the same understanding that somebody else does, even if we have the definition. I guess there's a reason why I majored in English and love literary theory, and now I'm in IT. But what we had to go through was an exercise where we had lots of discussions and actually built out a responsibility matrix where we gave examples of all the different activities and said, okay, this role, is accountable for that. And this role, is, supportive or consulted on this. And that was really helpful for us as an organization. We had those conversations with our IT leadership team, with our people managers, and then with our dedicated product managers, because as Nathalie mentioned, she's a director and she's in the service owner role. Some of our folks have a product manager title and some of our folks have different titles, but they have the product manager role. So sorting all of that out and making it clear has been an interesting journey.
Now we were just talking about it earlier before we started the webinar. Is like somebody walks into a new director of networking services or some sort of IT role. They don't necessarily come in knowing how to be a service owner or product owner, or so training, adoption. Ed's asking a question about some OCM and transitioning teams from products and services. So we do have a question. Hopefully at the end we'll be able to get to. We're talking around training, but yeah, that RACI matrix is a good start, right? So. All right, I'm going to jump to the next question. This is fielded by Sarah. Sarah, what techniques do you find most successful, effective in gathering customer feedback to build out your product and services?
So I'll start by saying that our focus has really been on being far more intentional about relationship management in general over the last several years. You can't get customer feedback unless you know your customers, and you can't get to know your customers only through things like surveys or focus groups, which are techniques that you can use. And so we have gone through the process of identifying, like with all the different colleges and units at our university, you know, who's on point to be a high-level relationship manager with each area, so that we have coverage in a wide variety of ways. That said, we do have a lot of techniques that I'm sure the rest of you use also that are real effective in gathering customer feedback. And I'll use an example that we're going through right now. We're in the process of launching a new student app called Go Ohio to simplify and streamline the student experience with how they access different products and services across our university. And so we have an executive governance board to get executive input. We have a steering committee to get input that way. And then our product manager and our campus engagement specialist spend a lot of time with students, focus groups, doing surveys, seeing how we're stacking up against, you know, net promoter score metrics, or how many times a student returns to an app. And so I would say the combination of all of those things is really important, and not concentrating too much and saying I can get everything I need from my annual IT survey is really important. I'll also say that we've had great experience with doing design sprints when we're trying to develop prototypes and engage our partners across campus in that.
Great answer. Sounds like design thinking in action there. Anybody else on the panel want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think for me as a service owner, the most effective way to collect feedback is one-on-one sessions with my stakeholders. And we do that very, very frequently. But then everything that we do, we measure. So we generate data for every single thing that we do. So, for example, if I have a customer feature request for one of the platforms, we plan it, we plan it in Jira, we create tasks, and then we prioritize, and we have so many things. Everything is modeled in data, everything that we do. So, and we have some buckets of data that are tagged as, customer implementation or feedback, continuous improvement implementations. Some buckets are service maintenance, some buckets. So we can aggregate that data and use it to generate metrics on, the various different implementations that we've done, and link them to the customer feedback, and do a lot of things with data. And generating data is very helpful. I'm just going to leave it at that.
I was responding to someone's question about product management community of practice. I recommended reading Mick Kirshen's book from project to product management, but maybe we can jump into that question at the end here. All right, moving on to the next question. This question is for Nathalie. How do you govern products and services?
So we have established what we call a DevOps practice around our enterprise platforms here at UCSD. So the DevOps practice is composed of cross-functional teams, and together we govern the technology, we govern the processes, and the standards around our platforms. So those various partners are, we have, of course, development teams, we have the platform and service reliability engineers, we have the sysadmins and cloud engineers, we have the QA and deployment automation engineers, and of course, the security group. So we all partner together, and we've established a series of meetings or meetings to govern our platform. So for example, we have our DevOps steering group, that those are the technical teams that see what the gaps are on the platforms, and then they present recommendations of, okay, those are the features that we need. to implement next from a technical perspective. And we have our platform governance group where the roadmaps and priorities are shared, and feature requests are collected from our development teams, and development of standards around the platforms also happen on the platform governance group. We have a DevSecOps group that focuses on the security. And then everything escalates to the DevOps leadership. So those are the directors and managers of the various teams. So this is where we discuss the various points of contention. If there are priorities that are not working right, they are brought up to the DevOps leadership group. If there are business cases for new technologies, how to, that can help us to do things better, cheaper, faster, business cases are also discussed on the DevOps leadership group. And then we would fold in our EA team, enterprise architecture team, for reviews and in order to adopt additional technology, additional services, and grow our portfolio. And then we also have communities of practice to spread the knowledge. We have multiple communities of practice: integration development, application development, DevOps community of practice. So with this DevOps practice that we've established, we are able to govern our enterprise platforms, the development standards, the priorities, and the roadmap item and all of that. And that's it.
So Nathalie, if you wouldn't mind, maybe can you share agendas or topics you use for your community of practice? Anybody can jump in. Sorry, I'm deviating from the question, but there was a question in Q&A about topics and agenda items for community of practices.
So, for example, well, we have various communities of practice. I could talk about, we have an integrations community of practice. So data integration really is, our standards to move data from a system to another. So there are some standards, like if you want to move data from a database to a database, in the communities of practice, developers come in and showcase. For example, this is the way I do it for database to database. This is how I do streaming on our streaming platform. Those are the standards. We do have another communities of DevOps community of practice where various different teams bring in information on how they're doing, for example, deployment or automations around their platforms. So the communities of practice are very technical in my case.
Okay. Yeah, the question was specifically around product management community practice, but yeah, I think you could apply similar concepts or similar topics to, product management community practice, right? From a book club to bringing in how you manage a product, how do you establish total cost of ownership around products, right? I think that's very interesting. So, all right, let's if you don't mind, let's move on to our last question, and Sarah will lead us off on this one. This is: what skill set do you look for from candidates looking to work in product and/or service management roles?
So this is one where, in my experience, it's pretty useful when someone has a pretty wide variety of jobs and responsibilities in their background. Business analysts have a lot of system thinking and analytical skill sets that are useful in a product manager role. We have folks on our team that have sales experience, because understanding and relating to stakeholders and knowing how to understand what problems they need to solve are really important in the product manager role. Strategic thinking, the ability to not just kind of picture where you're going, but how you're going to get there, is really important in the role. Interpersonal savvy, of course, is super critical. The product manager role requires a whole lot of figuring out how to get things done without always having the positional authority to be able to just tell people to do it. It requires lots of sophistication in terms of engaging with a wide variety of stakeholders across campus. And so prior jobs or being able to demonstrate the skills that you have that sophistication is really important to us. And I would say like technical or functional skills kind of come last on my list. I try to focus on behaviors, like some of the things that I mentioned, because skills can be taught. And I think at this point, most of us, not all of us, live in a world where things change so quickly that deep domain knowledge built over, 15 years can be less valuable than having a growth mentality and the right behaviors. So that's a little vague, but that's kind of how I look at it as a hiring manager.
I love that. Anyone else have similar or dissimilar sort of skills they look for in these roles? Let's go back to Ed's question, because I do want to cover that a little bit more detail. Talk a little bit about the OCM involved, like maybe moving from, if you're traditionally a service focused organization, or I think in my experience, I know a lot of organizations are application focused or technology focused, but moving from a service to a product centric organization that, Nathalie talked about having a DevOps governing group and DevOps squads and things like that. And I think that's rare in our vertical. So talk through some of that. Maybe Nathalie, you can add some comments there as well.
Yeah, I think in the product mindset, if we want to shift into the product mindset, I have three takeaways that I can share. First, we need to link our service or product improvement to business outcomes. That's the number one thing. Number two is to define our total cost of ownership factors. Like I talked briefly about what I consider my total cost of ownership factors, and let the cost and value drive the roadmap and priorities of the product, right, or the service, right? And then last but not least, and this is very important, establish a measurement framework to generate data to support your decisions. So for us, everything that we do, we have modeled around a development lifecycle, right? Everything that we do, whether we do a platform upgrade or we do a development, the act of developing on a platform, it all follows a development lifecycle. So it is a process, right, that starts with design, and then you have the development, build, unit testing, then promote to QA, so it's a process, right? So by generating a list of tasks that are modeled on that standard process, we are able to extract data about, okay, how much maintenance did we do? How many hours did we spend in maintenance this year? Versus how many hours does it take to develop on platform A versus platform B? So meaning, so we can make decisions accordingly. We can also take a look at the process and model it and try to make it faster by implementing some automations. So once you have that, the data informs the total cost of ownership at a lot of levels. So is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. And Mick's book talks a lot about different sort of product management metrics like flow, right? Yeah. So yeah, and Sarah, Ed was targeting you as well because you talked about cultural shift. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So when we talk about our IT operating model evolution, and you can Google it, and lots of organizations talk about it in the same way. We talk about, moving from where we started, which was doing IT to the business, core business or core campus partners, to doing IT for the business, which is kind of more transactional, but getting much better and much more consistent about delivering services and starting to move kind of up the value chain and to where we are now with working hard to do IT with the business. And so in our most recent transition, we went through probably a six-month process or so where we had to create our actual portfolio, because we moved from only having a service catalog to having what we call an IT portfolio that's split into a handful of product portfolios. And each of those has a bunch of products in it. So we actually had to develop that thing. We had to get feedback from our folks. We had to talk about roles and responsibilities and have all those conversations until we felt like we were closer to a shared understanding. We developed glossaries We developed a big long FAQ. We had a process where folks could ask questions. And then we used those questions to develop a really long FAQ list that's on our SharePoint intranet site. Really focused on community and communication and change management. We pulled together a cross-functional product team for the actual launch of the portfolio that was not just, leadership team members or management. It was made up of cross-functional folks from across our IT organization, 50-50 individual contributors as well. And that also helped with communication and change management because folks weren't only hearing about it from somebody on the leadership team, they might be hearing about it from a peer on their, home team. So we tried to put a lot of effort into the culture part, along with all the other, parts and pieces that went into rolling it out. And like I answered in my answer to the question, we just launched our first version on May 15th. We're super excited.
That's great to hear. I don't hear a lot of organizations doing portfolio well. I mean, we're all getting our catalogs down and our request catalogs. So, good job there. And I always look forward to inviting people back to give a presentation on how they've created their portfolio. So let me see if there's no questions currently in the Q&A. We talked through defining products and services. Does anyone want to add more comments around how they train new product or service owners? I know we touched a little bit on that, but any more information?
I would just be vulnerable and share that we haven't done much of that, right? So for my organization, I think that's an area of opportunity for us, leaning in again to some of those responsibilities that we've defined. So sorry, Mitch, I'm probably can't offer much in that regard.
So Sarah, besides like the RACI and sort of a job sheet, do you have sort of an onboard training for even Nathalie with the new service owners that you bring in or new hires you bring into service as a service owner? Do you have some sort of onboard training?
I'll jump in first. We have an onboarding process where they get training on the different skills that are required in their role. We have training sessions on how to create a roadmap and how to create a good product vision and a good product strategy. We have training sessions on things like what are the expectations? We call it IT financial management. And so our product managers have to do budgeting and they have to do financial variance reporting. And so how do you actually do that stuff? So we have training all around that. One of the interesting things that I'm finding right now is as we roll out our new portfolio, it's not just folks who have the IT product management title who will be in the role. And so figuring out how to develop quick start guides and what are the most important things you can do and when do you need to write a product requirements document and when don't you? All of those things I'm working on right now to make it a little more consumable for folks who are wearing multiple hats and don't have the luxury of focusing on it 100% of the time.
It's very exciting. I think, Nathalie, did you have something you wanted to comment on?
I know that we have a lot of robust documentation, service owners checklist, and a lot of documentation published by our service management team. Yeah.
Good. That's good to hear. Carrie has a great question. So yeah, let's make it real, right? So how do you give an example of a service, of a product, and maybe of a solution?
I could maybe answer that. And there's a link I was going to throw in chat here. So my organization's University of Colorado, specifically my department, University Information Services. We have what is known as ODIN. ODIN stands for Open Data and Information Network. And back to those words, right? ODIN really is a combination of several technologies, right, that are behind the scenes and that are doing things with data. But there's also a lot of action teams in UIS are taking behind the scenes to support ODIN. Whether it be application management, there's some identity and access management components, right? Our customers know it as ODIN, right? So they see it as a solution. It breaks down into technologies and things we do as a service provider, right? And that's actually a little bit of a segue into something I wanted to bring to this, which is something I think I'm learning as I go through this journey, is it's really important to be able to articulate to some degree the things you're doing as a service provider, right? The services you provide, the products that you can offer to customers. But I've kind of found that I think our customers tend to care the most about what they want to get, right? That value that they're after. And so products and services are important, right? But how you put those things together, that's kind of what customers see, right? That's what they care about. And so I just wanted to bridge that gap of how do you move from a set of language that an ITSM professional like myself would lean into, right? And then meet customers where they are in terms of the way that they perceive IT, right? And used to be the case you could go to IT, you had to go to IT, right? And now, like the world we live in, IT is everywhere, right? Departments have their own IT that they can spring themselves. And so I would just stress that understanding how customers perceive what it is that you offer, right? Solution, again, is a word that has some legs with our organization and with some of our customers, right? Oh, I get it. That's the stuff UIS does for me, right? And we call it this, and we can show them how it breaks down, right? But they just know it as this thing, right? It helps to simplify some of this framework from a customer perspective. You can still articulate what it is you do and what they're getting, right? But you can kind of refer to it as this one solution, if you will. So Carrie, that's an example of what we'd consider a current solution, and we're doing work still to kind of build out our solution catalog. So I don't have many more to give you, but hopefully that's helpful.
I think that's a good example. We have something similar at USC. And most of you probably have a student information system. It's probably a solution made up of various components. For us, GDS, a student's information or a student database. I mean, there's a bunch of different components to it, but nobody knows those underlying components. They just refer to it as our student information system, right? And it really, I love how you talked about, Kevin, where it's what is the business trying to achieve? How do they use the system or solution service every day that they care about? Ask them, what happens if this thing goes down? Is it going to stop you from working, or could you care less, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of questions you can ask, framing it and making it more human. So, sorry, I just really appreciate what you say about that, looking from the outside in. So, you must have an example of one of those terms that we've used that's a real example of that you use at your organization. All right, well, we've got a couple minutes left before I have to jump into the closing. Is there anything that anything else you want to share with our attendees? Any words of wisdom? Anything else?
Don't give up.
Yeah, don't
keep
give up.
Asking questions, keep the conversations going, right? Things do change over time. And there are really great resources out there. I mean, I do believe ITIL is a really great resource for a lot of these things, at least to get you started. And one of the tenets of that, right, is to take what works for you and adapt. There probably isn't one right answer, right? But in working, especially with this panel, I feel like we're all kind of orienting ourselves around the same concepts, right? And so again, what words are meaningful to your organization is probably the most important thing, right? What's going to resonate and get traction, I think would be, something to keep in mind, right? There's probably no perfect, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I just want to mention, we and the panelists and I have talked about, is there an opportunity to do anything as a follow-up, right? Because we've just really scratched the surface on trying to level set and come up with a good explanation of how each organization uses products, services, service offering solutions. But if there's something you want us to explore, a topic that you're interested in, reach out to myself. You have my email address in all the emails I send you. Reach out, let me know, and we can see if we can make something happen for the future. With that said, I will go ahead and close us out. Thank you, everyone, for making time to attend today. There is a link here. You'll get that at the end of the presentation when I end the recording or in the session. Please take a survey. It helps us to determine if we're providing value by offering these webinars. A reminder that the session's being recorded. It'll be available on the ITSM CG within 5 business days. Thank you, Nathalie, Sarah, Kevin, for your time today. Thank you, audience, for taking your time out today. Reach out to me if you have any ideas about a future follow-up webinar, either on this topic, or if you have a topic that you want to present on, like you've created an IT portfolio, you want to share with the rest of the community and how you got there. Love to hear from you. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.